Howdy, and welcome back to another episode of the Relationship School's Smart Couple Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Gaddis. What's up? Great to be with you, as always. If you're new, welcome to the show. This podcast is all about helping you feel more connected and accepted in your life and to get in the driver's seat of your relationships, especially the high-stakes relationships that you have. Because if you stay in the passenger seat and keep expecting results, you're going to not do so well. All right, so this podcast is going to help you get more and more in the driver's seat in your life. All right, keep listening because it's all about personal responsibility. It's okay to be stuck in the victim mindset sometimes, and there's a way out. You just got to want a way out. Some of us get a little stuck there, probably because we're getting a lot out of it. So, just look in the mirror and learn about you. Great. A few just amazing reviews have come in recently, so thank you. I wanted to say thanks, guys. Edupius. Hey, Jason, your podcasts are tools in my toolkit that I can go back to any time with each new or existing relationship where I need to polish up my skills and be able to share your teachings in meaningful, healing relationships. Thanks so much. Keep it going. And you said it's concise and timely. Cool. Thanks for your review, Edupius. Appreciate it. Seriously, guys, this means a lot. When you guys leave us reviews and you take the time out of your busy schedule and to say, hey, thank you, it really does help us reach more people. So if you haven't done that yet and you've been getting loads of value here, set your timer on your phone for 5 minutes and just knock this out, all right? We'd appreciate it. Okay, cool. Optional, of course. If you're not getting value here, then obviously don't do that. Okay, thanks again. All right, in this episode, I've got a much heated topic, narcissism, all right? We've had people on before to discuss narcissism, and I was like, gosh, I need to seek out someone who really knows what they're talking about here. And I reached out to Stan Tatkin and said, Stan, I know you know a lot about personality disorders, specifically narcissism. And do you have anyone who is like, who's the peak of their game in the narcissism conversation? He's like, I'll do it. I was like, great. So I think I'm getting a very, very well-educated human being who studied under James Masterson, who's like some people consider him like the godfather of personality disorders and studying them. Masterson, you're going to hear Stan and I just wanted to hear a little bit about Stan's training with Masterson. Masterson passed away in 2010. Yeah, he wrote a book called The Emerging Self. So this podcast is going to be for nerds. If you're a therapist, you're going to like this a lot. If you're a coach, you're going to like this a lot. If you are in a relationship where you've experienced narcissism or you think you are with a narcissistic partner, person, etc., you're going to like this, but it's very technical, especially in the beginning, and it's kind of clinical because Stan, as much as street level as he is, he's also can get really sciencey and technical. And I nerd out on this stuff, so I can talk for hours to Stan about something like narcissism, and it might actually bore you to tears. So just giving you that heads up here. But I think it's really valuable because so many people are throwing around the term narcissist lately, and it seems to be a good way to shame someone or make someone wrong. And all of you folks in the Relationship Schools Facebook group, for example, some of you, I continue to try to help you go, okay, let's watch the labels here. Please just don't throw around the term narcissism because it's a very, very significant label. And typically it is someone who, like our president, will never get help and will never take responsibility and always is looking to blame someone else. So I think this is very timely, actually, believe it or not. Okay, so this is a long-winded intro. I've got to go a little further, though, on the intro. Stan talks about two types of narcissism here, the exhibitionist and the closeted narcissist. And I got an education here I got some unique distinctions that I was not aware of previously that were very enlightening for me. Now, I don't study personality disorders because I don't like to work with someone who won't take responsibility, right? Years and years ago in my psychotherapy practice, if people wouldn't own their shit, I was like, next, I can't work with you. Go somewhere else, to someone else. And I was also ineffective at working with people who are extremely defended. I don't like that kind of work. I'm not patient enough. But some of you might be, which is cool. Okay. Yeah, this is so interesting. So I'm going to nerd out on this a little bit after the outro. So stay tuned to your action step. If you want to listen to my thoughts on this episode, please just listen. Just keep listening after Stan and I drop, okay? We did have a technical difficulty or two during the conversation, but I feel like we get to the meat of it about halfway through. Okay, who's Stan Tatkin? Some of you know him. He has been on the podcast before 3 times. This is his 4th appearance, which is so cool. Go back and check out episodes 220, 104, and 53. Most of those episodes we're talking about attachment, adult attachment in relationships, interpersonal stress. All right, check those out, 220, 104, and 53. Stan is the assistant clinical professor at the UCLA David Geffen School of Medicine, Department of Family Medicine. He's on the board of directors at the Lifespan Learning Institute. That's where Dan Siegel, some of his work happens, and serves as founding member on Relationships First, a nonprofit organization founded by Harville Hendricks and Helen Hunt, who've also been on the podcast. Stan's a couple therapist. He trains couple therapists. My wife has studied with Stan for many years, and Stan is a badass when it comes to couples specifically, I think. He's trained thousands of therapists. He's got a really unique approach called PACT, a psychobiological approach to couple therapy. He's written about a lot of books, Wired for Love. His latest one is called We Do. They've been translated into 5 different languages or so. He's got 6 books. Check those out as well. And Stan is one of our Relationship School ambassadors who is saying, yes, I support the Relationship School doing what they're doing, and I'm here for you if you need me. Stan's been a big ally for us. Okay, let's dive right in and stay tuned to the end for your action step and then more of my thoughts. Okay, welcome back to the show, Dr. Stan Tatkin.
Hi, Jason. Good to see you.
Yeah, awesome seeing you again. Stan, we're going to talk about narcissism today, and just to kind of frame the context, the listeners all know who you are at this point, so we don't need to get into who this guy is. Before I get into kind of defining narcissism,
Sure.
And kind of some of the different definitions we see these days,
Right.
you studied under Dr. James Masterson, who I understand is kind of the guy when it comes to personality disorders. Would you just talk a little bit about what had you train and why did you want to learn about these kind of complicated people?
When I first was in school, I went to a school, Antioch at the time, was definitely oriented towards humanistic existential psychology. And so psychoanalytic theory was not highlighted there. And so I had opinions about it, overly erudite, blah, 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 and so, but I became introduced to Jim during that time when I was in my undergraduate with a teacher who explained, actually she self-diagnosed herself as borderline, but explained that Masterson was the first to say that personality disorders are treatable. Up until Masterson, and whether this is actually fully accurate or not, I can't say, because there's Kernberg and so on. But up until Masterson, it was considered kind of a fait accompli. That if you had a personality disorder, you're always going to have a personality disorder, and that is pretty much it. And personality disorders were considered as a pejorative idea to have a personality disorder. You're sort of society's burden, and untreatable psychiatrically through medications, all sorts of other stuff. That part is fairly true, the treatment part. But so I was both attracted to this guy and repelled. When I worked with John Bradshaw, and I got my start with Bradshaw in the Bradshaw centers. These were at hospitals. I was doing intensive group psychotherapy work, 2.5 hour groups a day, doing highly abreactive work. And
is Bradshaw like is that addiction work, or is that something else?
Bradshaw was popular in the 80s and 90s. He came from the AA tradition, and along with Pia Melody and Melody Beattie, brought to the fore the term codependency, and that the family system is part of the addiction issue, something that systemic therapists knew, but he brought it into the Commonwealth through his PBS programs, and he had a very evangelical way of speaking, which I had to say turned me off at the time. But I was very happy to get the gig, and I miss him. He's now passed, but we were dealing with codependency diagnoses at that time. People could be in 30 to 60-day programs inpatient for diagnosis of codependency. Now that doesn't exist. And what I found in this unit that traveled from hospital to hospital was that the patient population that we attracted tended to be more often than not disorders of the self. And so it was a terrible management thing. And I had the great experience of being, a well-regarded, loved group therapist until I wasn't. And then I began to learn the meaning of splitting and what can happen when you're on the wrong side of the split. I would go home in tears. I would, consider maybe this isn't the right field for me. It's the first and only time I think I felt that way.
And splitting, just for context for people, is when a client unconsciously in the group splits you and the other group therapist, or?
That's right. Splitting can happen in a variety of ways. One such way is internal. That is, you're the best therapist in the world, and then something happens, you're the worst therapist in the world. And there's no integration of those two. Yeah. There's no sense of good and bad existing at the same time. And then there's splitting of people, where the disorders of the self are known to split one therapist and the other therapist, or the therapist and the institution, or the doctor, and so on. Mm-hmm. And so it's a common problem of treatment management. And I learned the hard way. When my friend Jeffrey Zeig, who does the Evolution of Psychotherapy conference, I was influenced greatly by my forays into those every 5-year seminars, and I came across Masterson, and I was beguiled. I was fascinated with him, and so I reached out and I started learning the Masterson approach, basically American self and object relations. So this is strictly American object relations, very different from British object relations, and American object relations is more aligned with ego psychology. So we can get into this if you'd like, the differences, and they're a bit night and day. So I started training under Masterson, and he became a mentor for me. And I began to enjoy working with the population. I enjoyed my time at Bradshaw. Probably was not a great therapist because I hadn't yet fully integrated the theory, but I certainly had better defenses. Mm-hmm. And so I was grateful for that. And that kind of continued and changed my path in my thinking and my work to still, to this day, at the core, thinking in terms of object relations, which attachment is a form of, and also systemically.
Yeah.
So that's the history of me and Jim Masterson.
Cool. And just for the listeners, so you've said the disorder of the self. So is that what you're defining as a personality disorder?
That's right. And so in object relations, unlike the DSM, personality disorder is looked at as a spectrum, because the DSM only looks at the condition defining it so that it can be diagnosed, and it can be that the terms of the diagnosis can be shared amongst a variety of clinicians. Also, it's for insurance.
Yeah.
But disorder of the self is based on developmental theory, based on infants and children, and how people develop personality, which includes ego structure. And now I'm much more into neuroscience, how the brain functions and develops. So it's a fascinating area, and disorders of the self are on a spectrum of, we could say, borderline spectrum meaning on the cusp under stress between neurotic and psychotic. That under stress, disorders of the self will exhibit psychotic-like behaviors or thinking, and show real cognitive deficits in being able to reality test. Mm-hmm. So there's a whole variety of markers that have to be lined up. All the boxes have to be checked in order to deem somebody as having a disorder of the self, aka personality disorder.
Yeah.
Right. And
okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And I want you to talk about let's just kind of frame the conversation also around we're going to talk about narcissism. So what is that? I know these days we can just throw the term around, and a lot of people are, quote, narcissists. There's covert, overt. There's a lot of...
I know you are, but what am I?
Right. There's so many can you set us straight? Like, let me just share, for example, when you look it up online, it says excessive interest or admiration in oneself and one's physical appearance, selfishness involving a sense of entitlement, lack of empathy, a need for admiration, blah, blah, blah. And I'm curious how you would define narcissism.
Well, narcissism developmentally is a normal part of the human condition. Narcissism is part of being human. There's healthy narcissism. Healthy narcissism is what you and I are doing right now. We're putting ourselves out there. We're enjoying being, talking and teaching and so on. Healthy narcissism is in line with the Aristotelian principle of we're moving towards complexity, and I reach for something that's a higher bar. It's not so high that it's out of my reach, but it's higher because I strive to learn more, be more, move towards complexity. I feel I deserve that. That's a healthy self-entitlement. I deserve good health. I deserve an appropriate reciprocal relationship with others, and so on. So healthy self-entitlement is connected to a real self, and a real self is connected to a functioning reality ego, which I'll get into. And all these are connected. So we use narcissism often in a pejorative way to put people down, or to say that this person is arrogant and overly entitled. And that's a more pathogenic form of narcissism, is the kind that is over entitled, that never gave up what most of us gave up. You can't get everything what you want. The Stones, for them, that you can, and they do, and the world lets them get away with it. So that kind of narcissism comes from known injuries at different points in development during childhood. These are injuries and they're adaptations based on conditions, environmental, and also constitutional inside the child that converge and conspire to create a condition that we call narcissism in the pathologic sense. But it's confusing because there are many different kinds depending on who you read and how you think about it. And so this is where you get into the nuances of narcissism. The puer aeternus, the flying boy, who is always dreaming, grandiose, flying above, never grounded, and so on. That's a form of narcissism, the Peter Pan syndrome form of narcissism. But nobody really complains because it's benign most of the time, unless you're in a partnership with them. There are the phallic narcissists. This comes, I believe, from Kernberg, that is someone who uses their power over other people in a sexual way, in an exploitative way. Malignant narcissists, we have a leader who often is called a malignant narcissist. But I want to divide these into two camps to make it more simple.
Right.
One is the kind that we commonly think of, that's in all the fairy tales, that is part of development, and that is the exhibitionistic type. The type that needs to be admired, will insist on being admired. They are really good at getting narcissistic supplies, and those supplies, money, beauty, intelligence, youth, and power. Okay, those are the five, and that's their drug. So much so that these characters do not do drugs or alcohol. That's their drug, and they're very good at getting it. They're good at getting it because in human civilization, in the human DNA, we're a narcissistic creature, and we look to leaders, people that we admire, people that we look to as heroes or idealize. It is part of our DNA. It's in everything we do, and so they fit hand in glove. The person who believes they're God has followers who want to believe in somebody who's God. And so there you have...
That's a lot of spiritual teachers.
There you have a perfect circle. You have the exhibitionistic narcissistic disorder, who is so good at what they do, they don't get depressed, and they commandeer a circle of others that actually have pretty much what they have, but it's a different type. And they first draw people in by using their ability to charm and to build people's ego up. Jason, you are special. I know special when I see it. You can go far. Stick with me, and I'll make sure you get there. So I can seduce you by using your own narcissism, but I will keep you by threatening you. That if you ever do anything to disappoint me or betray me, I will make your life miserable. You'll never work in this town again. I'll destroy you. So there's a drawing in by attraction, and then there's a holding in by threat and fear. And this is the way of that character structure. And this has been throughout history. Always throughout history. So the problem with this structure is that not only are they powerful at commandeering supplies, narcissistic supplies, there's never-ending number of people that want to affiliate with this person, but these people encircle this character and protects them from the outer hostile world that would see the emperor without clothes.
Right.
And so, again, you have this perfect political, psychological system that's based on the human need to idealize and look for a savior and not question reality. That's one type. And that is basically made with parents like Freud, was this type in a sense. He was the golden child. His mother had many stillbirths and losses, and so he was the golden child. So much so that you never really hear about his siblings. And so, without any kind of limitations, without any kind of boundaries by the parents, the child can believe that they're the second coming, and they're fulfilling some need for the parent, and therefore there is no God other than me. I'm the chosen one. I'm the prince. I get all the goods. It's good to be king. But I see myself as sort of somewhat shameless. I can do whatever I want, and that's a double-edged sword, by the way. So these are made in childhood by parents that don't frustrate the natural secondary narcissism that arises in early childhood.
And with this one question, with the clarifying question with the parent, what is the parent's part in this? If I'm a parent, am I getting out of, I'm trying to think, what would I get out of that as a parent to tell my kid that they're special and they can do anything they want and they're the best in the world? I get supplies, right? I get to believe I'm a great parent and I have value now.
I have value in that child. This is, drama, The Gifted Child. I'm living my life through my child.
Yeah. Okay.
They're the best skater. They're the best dancer. They're the best politician, and so on.
Yeah.
They can do no wrong, and I never frustrate them. I never stop them. I never say no. I don't. Right? Mm-hmm. Of course, there are casualties in the family, because where there's the star, there are the failures. Yeah. In the family as a cost. So that's one form. The other form is much more common and pervasive in the general population. Structurally, they're the same in terms of their sort of bifurcated binary way of seeing good and bad. And that is the kind that is unsuccessful at being exhibitionistic, but are therefore closeted. They're ashamed of their grandiosity or their omnipotence. And their only hope is not to get out of that structure, but is to look for others under whom they can bask in their glow. So I am not God, but I'm affiliated with God. I'm affiliated. And here you have the majority of people who pass as psychoneurotic or borderline, and they're actually closeted narcissists. These are the fangirls, fanboys, the people who will support the leader no matter what, the person who is protecting the abusive father, and so on. These are the dressers, sometimes the dancers for the star, These are the people that want to affiliate and bask in the glow of the other. And whereas these people still look for narcissistic supplies, they're not as successful, and therefore they do get depressed and they do come to therapy. But they are also have the same issue, and that is I'm either the best or I'm the worst. I'm either accepted, not admired. I want your approval. I don't need your admiration. I know I need to admire you, but I need your approval. I'm looking for it at all times. And if I don't get it, watch out, because the negative side of the good feeling of being this in this structure of being rewarded by approval and by being accepted into the ranks and sit at the table with the big one. The other side of that is I'm shite, I'm nothing, I'm existentially cast out, I'm crushed, I'm humiliated, shamed. The sense of self is so fragmented and so vulnerable at all times that I'm constantly at risk at being exposed. And the exposure is exquisite, where I'm not good enough, I'm not handsome enough, I'm not pretty enough, I didn't perform as well as I'm supposed to, you don't approve of me, you're disappointed in me. That will put me into a kind of analytic depression, that is the same as any personality disorder is avoiding, that mother loss, that deep sense of abandonment for which I cannot tolerate. So the alternative for the narcissistic structure is to avoid at all costs the negative self-representation of being bad. The negative self-representation of being bad is worse than bad. It is annihilated. And so I will instead make you feel this way. I will attack you. I will cut you off. I will dismiss you. I will devalue you. You are dead to me, and it's cold.
Yeah,
it's
I'll act
cold.
like I don't care.
In the closeted form of narcissism, one of the ways that gets set up is a continuous crushing of the child's burgeoning exhibitionism, or grandiosity, rather. So theoretically, in the practicing subphases of childhood, when the child is fully mobile and standing and walking, there's a period of secondary narcissism, of feeling expansive, like I'm big like you, mommy and daddy. I can stand. I can, have conversations at the water cooler with my peers. And that's usually frustrated naturally by reality, actually. But if there's a parent that's harsh in their parenting style and consistently is threatened by a child's own grandiosity, they'll get smacked down, and the grandiosity will be shamed. So think of it this way: there's only room for one God. There's only one queen, one king. Yeah. And I'll show you at key times repeatedly that if you think you're bigger than you are, I'll resize you very quickly.
Oof. Yeah.
And so the structure is becoming consolidated by the interactions that are repeated in the parenting of that child. The injury remains an injury, and with all major injuries to the self, including attachment insecurities, development tends to slow or even halt, which is why disorders of the self are developmental delays that are pre-Oedipal, pre the period of moving from dyads to triads, or as Melanie Klein would say, from the paranoid schizoid position to the depressive period.
Dyads to triads, you meaning from me and mom to me, mom and dad, or me, mom and siblings?
Me and primary caregiver to have to deal with a competing other. Mm-hmm. Where my exclusive orbit is disrupted and interfered with. And this isn't simply because of the presence of the other, it's the awareness of the other. And I'm having, this period of practicing and rapprochement is an intense period of crisis for this young child. Not only are there rapid changes going on in the brain and brain upgrades, which we know give rise to anxiety and depression, but there's also a frustration with the primary object, the caregiver, and the caregiver's, dawning reality of imperfection. Mm-hmm. And our dawning reality of imperfection, and having to deal with splitting good and bad into accepting gray, which is depressing. In other words, we're dealing with the vicissitudes of loss.
Loss of fantasy?
Loss in everything. Mm-hmm. You could say from birth forward, we're losing things. We're gaining things, but that's also considered a loss because, you get a promotion, and that's a stressor because now you've lost your previous station, and you're moving into something that's unknown that you've not yet wrapped your head around. Mm-hmm. and there's going to be a curve, a learning curve, spike curve, and everything is going to change, and that's a loss. So always gains and losses, and childhood is about being scaffolded, regulated, supported enough by parents who are a resource themselves that allow the child to grieve these losses incrementally. The problem with trauma and disorders of the self and attachment insecurity is that there may be too much to deal with that forces adaptations in the personality in the case of disorders of the self, or in adaptation to attachment security and defensive behavior as a result. Mm-hmm. So this really has to do with how well the child internally is able to handle, and that's something that can't be predicted. And the external environmental support in dealing with these milestones and these crises. And parents themselves have injuries, many of which are not worked through, and those injuries are triggered by the child's own struggles, and then you have nature repeating itself.
Totally. Hey friends, quick interruption. You've probably heard about our relationship coach training by now, where we teach you how to go from a rescuer to a guide. And it's a very powerful training. It's 9 months long. If you want to check out the details, go to relationshipschool.com/RCT to find out more. Here's what one of our coaches had to say.
Hi there, my name is Ph.D. and I'm a level 1 individual coach with the Relationship School. The program for me has provided several things. One is that I was able to, through coaching, find my personal alignment and my ability to self-regulate and to stay present when in connection with others. That was a big one for me. The feedback on our coaching videos was revolutionary. Blind spots I had obviously not been aware of were made clear, but in service to my growth and my being an effective coach. And I always felt that. I felt like the teachers had my back and the students had my back. In addition, I think one of the greatest benefits was being in community with coaches, being able to really see each of us grow and continue our process to learn where we needed to have support and care and a challenge, frankly. So I can't recommend it more highly. It has changed my life wildly for the better and has given me a real focus, direction, and hopefulness for this work. I have seen it in my own life be very effective, and I believe in it wholeheartedly. So I feel like I'm in the right place.
Okay, there you have it. Ph.D., one of our level 1 relationship coaches. You can hire her by going to relationshipschool.com/coaching. And her life changed. Your life could change. Go to relationshipschool.com/RCT if you want to apply for our training. All right, back to the podcast. So let me ask you a couple of questions just for the listener here. So we've got exhibitionist and closeted narcissism. The way I understand closeted is I get hurt and repeatedly over and over, not allowed to just kind of explore my greatness or my full expression.
Crushed.
I get hurt enough times that I'm going to probably completely wall off and see relationships as valuable. Is that fair? Like valuable in terms of I'm going to get my needs met.
I'm going to wall off in what? I'm sorry?
I'm going to wall off and kind of so that I don't get hurt again. I'm going to not let people in. Is that?
I don't know if that's really the case, because everybody has their version of not letting people in because they've been hurt.
Yeah.
For the narcissist, just think of it this way: the development, the injuries occur at the point at which the self is still consolidating, the self is still forming, and so by definition, the narcissistic disorder is still focused on a self that is yet not complete. Mm-hmm. and is fragmented, and therefore relationships come second. Right? Relationships are not yet there yet. I care more about the integrity of the self than I care about a relationship. That's coming soon, but I'm not there yet. So I'm always protecting the self, which makes me in some way not fully myself, right? Think of it this way. If I were looking at myself in the mirror and it shattered, I have a shattered sense of self. So I look down and I pick the biggest shard of mirror and I hold that up and I say, that's going to be me. Mm-hmm. And I make that all me. That could be my beauty. That could be my sports prowess. That could be my intelligence. That could be the fact that I'm a trust fund baby and I'm wealthy.
Sure, but why are relationships coming second? Is it because I got hurt that now I'm like, fuck relationships, I'm not going to get any needs met here. I've got to take care of myself? It's not like that, you're saying.
Not even close. It is, I am not in relationship, really. I am.
Because that's still forming, the relationship is still forming my sense of self, and it got crushed and smashed before I could complete this process.
Right. I am prone to fuse.
Got it.
I am at the point of fusion, which means that I still carry around a fantasy of omnipresence, that you're always around. Mm-hmm. We see this in the baby in the practicing period. They're able to move far distances because they have a fantasy in their mind that their mother or caregiver is always there. And therefore they're free to be what feels to be independent, but they're not. Later on, they'll be aware of their mother's impermanence, and that'll freak them out and cause them to cling. But right now, mother's always there. Life is perfect, and life should be perfect. And there is a sense of oneness, one-mindedness, that mother and I are one. Yeah. We have the same thoughts, the same feelings, the same intentions.
Got it. So this is like I haven't not differentiated yet.
Right.
So I am the same as mom.
Not the same because that's psychotic.
Yeah. Okay.
But I have a fantasy of it that's been undisturbed, and therefore I carry that forward. So if Jason, if you disagree with me, one of us is wrong. And if one of us is wrong, one of us is bad. It's not going to be me. So you're not going to win. I'm going to make you wrong. Mm-hmm. I can't be wrong. I can't tolerate you having a different intention than me.
Or experience,
I feel attacked by that. Mm-hmm. I can't tolerate you having a different experience than me. We went to a movie I thought was wonderful. Not so much. I feel attacked by that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Anything that differs from my self-view in the moment is seen as an attack, because then if I'm wrong, I must be bad, I must be inadequate, and that makes me ashamed.
Yeah,
and the shame is responded to with rage, because shame is disintegrating.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and then with the exhibitionist, is it the same sort of, at the beginning we're one, but you tout me as super special, and I believe that because it makes you special, and together we're kind of in this special dynamic.
That's right.
So it's not a shattering, but it's an inflated, developing sense of self. It's a sense of self that's actually grandiose. It's not based in reality.
Yes, except that I don't get depressed. You can't hurt me because you're nothing. You're a minion. I flick you off and I replace you with the many others who are waiting to take your place. Uh-huh. If you're a love relationship, there are others. So long, ta-ta.
I don't feel anything.
I don't. It's shifting objects, right? One is the same as the other.
Yeah.
And so disapprove of me. Bye.
Yeah. I'll just cut you off. Cut you out of my life.
Shame me. make a mockery of me, be someone that I can't get away from, I could murder you.
Yeah.
Murderous rage. So there is this. Think of God and Satan. Satan is the closet that Satan felt left and disposed of, and not good enough, and sought to get revenge. And
big injury to the self, and they're on a mission to like fucking fuck everybody up in their life. Like, get away from me.
You will, yeah. Whereas the borderline is, you will not ignore me. I will show you what it feels like. You will pay for this. The narcissist, I said good day. You're not even in my radar. Don't even try. Mm-hmm. It is so cold and dismissive. It's instead of pulling you onto the roller coaster of emotion and engagement, I flick you off. And anybody who's been on the other end of this knows how devastating it can be, because narcissists, above all else, know exactly where to aim in terms of shame.
Yeah.
And they also can bring about a sense of envy in others, because they're getting away with things that we can't. So keep in mind that these things are normative. All the personality disorders are found in fairy tales, in mythology. Some of our best Disney animated movies contain the exhibitionistic type of narcissist. The closeted type is usually the parrot or the animal that's the sidekick of the evil
Jiminy Cricket
one.
or whatever. Yeah.
Well, Jiminy Cricket, no, is not that. Jiminy Cricket is a healthy voice of the self, a parent voice.
Cool.
I'm talking about Gaston, in Beauty and the Beast. I'm talking about not Gaston, but the guy who is his, the one who serves him, supports him as a sidekick. Every one of those movies has one. Mm-hmm. The wannabe, but I'll turn on you in a dime if I see a better opportunity. So that's the closeted.
And closeted, you're saying, is the one that will come to therapy someday. Whereas,
because they get depressed. They're not really as good as the exhibitionist.
Yeah, got it. And they have this, pretty fractured sense of self. So if we can just circle back and then I have a few questions for you. Just circle back to, can this actually be worked with? A lot of our podcast listeners in our Facebook group said, can someone actually heal narcissism? Can someone recover?
Yes, absolutely. Proven without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay. And what's the main line for that?
Relationship.
Right.
Relationship with somebody who knows what they're dealing with. The average relationship isn't going to do it. Only tremendous loss repeatedly might get somebody to wonder about themselves, but mostly the narcissist blames others, and will just fire them, get rid of them if they feel crossed. But when they're in such pain, if they're with an analyst, somebody who understands how this works, there are inroads. There are inroads that are quite strategic and tricky, but the average person may be skillful enough to know what they're dealing with, but most don't, because the presentation is so threatening, depending on who you're dealing with. The patient of a doctor who's a young female doctor, hey, sweetheart, are you single? It does all these things to belittle, to make them feel small, and to really send a message implicit. You mess with me, and I can hurt you. Mm-hmm. In terms of your field. So there's that threat. There's that sense of either I got to admire this person, or I've got to approve of them, or I will pay for it. Yeah. There's that sort of ransom that is felt.
And so people call the exhibitionist overt and the closeted covert narcissism. Is that fair that some people use those two terms?
Yes. But the behaviors, the behavioral markers, the quality of interactions are very different.
Yeah,
very
yeah,
different.
I'm getting that. And in terms of like people often ask, and people have asked in our Facebook community, how do you spot someone? A lot of people have a recurring experience of dating a narcissist, and they're like, how did I get here? And they don't understand their part of the dynamic, and they
Right.
want to know, how do I not pick a narcissist? What's the move there, and who does this closeted narcissist typically attract?
People, because we're dealing with a people problem here. Narcissists are people. They've gone through what we've all gone through. They're just stuck there, and they're harboring specific fears and limitations based on years and years of adaptation. What makes the difference is that the personality disorder demands the environment mold to shape to their reality.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how virulent the disorder is, they're successful at doing that. And so, but a lot of people have narcissistic features, and this term is bandied about as sort of an aggression against others that hurt them. And just like borderline, just all of these terms, we can use this as an excuse for our own bad behavior,
Right.
and also as a way to not do due diligence in figuring another person out and seeing them as a fully fleshed out person. It's very easy to just label a narcissist and be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's lazy, and it's aggressive, and it's no better than the
Totally.
person you're calling.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
We pair bond by recognition and familiarity. Therefore, somebody who keeps picking a narcissist has it themselves, or somewhere in the background. It's familiar to them, and therefore to say that this is not me is not only not true, but it's also a way to not learn and not a way to understand self and other.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That's very confronting, I think, for some of the listeners to hear that want to, gosh, how do I get away from a narcissist? How do I avoid a narcissist? I can't believe I dated another narcissist. And there's just this language, and it feels so full of blame.
Right. It is in itself narcissistic.
Right.
That behavior is in itself narcissistic.
So this person, one of the pieces of advice I heard you say, which
folks.
I think is great. What'd you say?
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the buzzkill here, but
it's time to have a come to Jesus about looking in the mirror.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have you on. So time to sober up here. The person, one of the things they can do, though, is they can look at their own history and say, it's somewhere in my family. I grew up with a narcissistic parent, or, right? They can look there also.
And it's a sensitivity. Narcissists are fragile. They're more fragile than others. Their sense of self is fragile. Their sense of dependency is in denial. Their need for others' approval and admiration has a certain sadness to it. This person is made of fantasy, is made of an idea of themselves, is made of what they convince other people to believe in, but they're lacking a real self, and are empty inside, and are very, very sensitive to feeling ashamed.
Yeah.
And exposed as not being good enough, of being attacked, of being, right? I mean, these are vulnerabilities. And so if another person doesn't understand this, they're going to amplify it, and they're going to make the behavior worse.
Mm-hmm. Completely. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you a couple of questions just from the group that are great. Just a question from Kristen here. At what point does it become narcissism versus someone who is in the normal range of human selfishness? Is there a kind of scale where a person would fall on the lesser narcissistic side and potentially be a willing partner to grow and change?
The
the disorder has a hard time with warmth and empathy because of their lack of separation inside between self and other. They see others as an extension of themselves, and that's why Kohut called it self-object. They're not yet developed in terms of an internalized sense of self and other, and then separating from it. And so they're playing by themselves. They're self-stimulating, self-soothing. They tend to be exploitive. They tend to see their partners more of an object. They're less interested in them. They're more interested in self-needs and self-wants. They're more likely in lovemaking to auto-regulate, meaning they're playing by themselves with another, and that will eventually lead the other person to feel like they're not really being seen or they're not really being engaged with.
Mm-hmm.
Want to be very careful about that, because people then can take that and point their finger at their partner and say that's them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. We're talking about a consistent pattern, an unyielding pattern that is nothing but this.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing but this. There's a coldness, a judging. There's a sense of I value you, I don't value you, I want you, I don't care. There's an indifference, again, coldness. There is a lot of envy. There's this whole patterning.
Yeah.
It's not a feature.
Yeah, I got something big there a minute ago with the lack of empathy. Lack of empathy in a narcissistic person is not because they've been so deeply hurt. It's because they're so fused to someone else that they actually don't know the difference between self and other. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. And when the other is behaving in a different way, it's an irritant.
Yeah.
When another person's complaining, they're attacking me.
Yeah, and they see it that way because they're fragmented, right? They don't have a sense of self to know, oh, you're different than me. I don't need to take this seriously or personally. Is that?
They literally aren't at the point of you're different than me.
Okay, God, wow.
That if we were to do a brain scan, we would find structural correlates that area, the areas of the brain that should be wired together are not yet wired together. When somebody finally gets that we're different and that we both can be right, that's a developmental achievement, a milestone.
Yeah.
That one never goes backward. Right?
Yeah, totally.
But people like this literally don't have that capacity.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, and you're saying this injury happens, really, I'm hearing kind of between 0 and 2.
Yes.
It's not like something, I don't become like a narcissist at age 15 because I got hurt or something.
No. It's a continuous parenting style at key critical times, and then an environmental reinforcer. Depending on how this kid is operating. But we also have to take into account that there are other factors here that have nothing to do with the parents, and that has to do with, it's called diathesis, the confluence between genetic predisposition and constitution and environmental stress.
Nurture.
Yes. So it's quite possible to have a very narcissistic child with other children that aren't, but the same parents. Now, different parents at different times, but the child's internal capacities and genetic predispositions and so on can't be accounted for. So given the right environmental stressor, that could produce a disorder of any kind, or a talent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like epigenetics in a way.
It's epigenetics, and I don't want to give too much credence to genetics, because genetics take a back seat to environment.
Okay.
Environment is the culprit mostly in expressing the gene.
Okay, cool. Couple other quick questions here, Stan, and I know we're winding down on time here. Kind because I think you have a call. I think I have a call. So Kelly asks an interesting question. What does love feel like for like a closeted narcissist? What does love feel like for them? Do they experience love? Is it more of an infatuation? And
love is a problem because love is defined differently by different people, and it's problematic. Everybody has to get very specific with the person they're with. What does this mean? And even then, words don't fully do the trick. We have to understand that we only approximate each other's minds. We'll never be inside somebody. Mm-hmm. We can only try to find them and lose them and find them again by being curious and interested. Mm-hmm. Other than that, we've never lived outside of our heads, and we never will. My idea of love may not be exactly the same as yours, and I can try to scratch that itch, but I never can exactly, because we're talking about the way people actually behave toward each other, not a feeling.
Right.
I will say this, that in the narcissistic world, there is a tendency to idealize others. There's a tendency to be overly familiar very quickly. I fall in love right away. I know you. You're the person I want to marry. You're the best. And it comes off as to the other person as inappropriate because you don't know me. You don't know me. Mm-hmm. I'm falling in love with an idea of myself. I'm falling in love with my fantasy. And one should get it right away. Rotro, that fantasy is not a real person. That fantasy is a constantly shifting picture that's shifting with the person's own state of mind. So perfect is a big issue here. I need things to be perfect. I need to be perfect. Mm-hmm. I need you to be perfect. I don't like imperfection. If you have an imperfection, it reflects on me because we're not separate.
Yeah, totally. So these are signs, again, that we can start to identify if we're with someone.
A narcissist, yes.
Yeah, cool. Stan, do you have any other? I could nerd out on this for so long, and I'd love to get into borderline personality disorder maybe another time, and the connection here. What a lot of people say codependency and narcissism go hand in hand.
That's an old idea, and that's a construct.
Okay, tell me your, just can you bust that construct and just insert sort of a new frame there for us?
People are people. All people are a pain in the ass. Everyone has got everything, and it's hubris to think that only you've got it, especially if I picked you and I'm in relationship with you. So this whole business of them and us, of otherizing people and categorizing them, is not the best of the human condition.
I'm so with you.
Yep. It can be. Everything that's a feature in our mind or in our brain is also a bug. Everything that is great about our ability to make shit up and to create things that don't exist are beautiful, from beautiful relationships to beautiful unions among people to flat earthers. To it doesn't matter. We can use this powerful instrument to for good or bad, to alienate people or to bring them close. People who are codependent, by definition, are in the same boat as those people who are alcoholic or narcissistic. They both have one thing in common: they don't play well together. They don't collaborate. They don't cooperate. They don't see the system as being fully adult, shared power, collaborative, and cooperative. They don't. And so the codependent is in an unfair situation where they're giving things up and hoping for getting something in return. Yeah. That's not adult, and that's not actually fully engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Huge.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then
so the clock's on both their houses.
Yeah, that's right.
And nice. I fully understand it.
Oh yeah.
Because it's human.
Yeah. And you said just a couple, like you said, relationship is like the main line to heal narcissism. And I would agree that it's kind of the main line to heal most things, right?
It's all interpersonal.
Totally. So maybe one more thing we can do if we find ourselves judging another person or an ex as narcissistic, we can look in the mirror, right? We can look at our own stuff, our own history, the fact that we might have someone in our family who is narcissistic, or we might be. And what's like one step we can take to begin to work on ourselves, because we can't change that person.
We can't change the person, but knowing ourselves is connected to knowing another. Knowing another is connected to knowing the self. Being compassionate with another is connected to being compassionate to the self, vice versa. So since it's all interactive, pay attention, be curious. You're judging what's really bothering you, what's really hurting you, what could be motivating this person to behave in this way. Are they evil? Very few evil people in the world. They're just mostly people doing things automatically by recognition and memory and reflexive. So I would say a little more openness and curiosity in relationship with everybody. Watch your own judginess, watch your own limitations in just giving up and categorizing somebody as a way of dismissing them. We think we know, we don't know. People are too complicated. A lot of this is really a heartfelt, I'm interested in you. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to understand, not because I'm protecting myself from you, but because I'm interested.
Yeah, genuinely.
That's a good way to start to know yourself.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Stan Tatkin, thanks so much for hanging with us here and teaching us about narcissism and personality disorders today.
You're welcome. This was fun.
Yeah, and where can people find you?
At stantatkin.com or the PACT, P-A-C-T Institute.com, where we train therapists in the approach I developed. And also we do a couple of retreats. I know you do this too. A couple of retreats, and we used to do it all over the world. Now we do it all over the world in our home.
Yep, actually. Exactly. Cool. Thanks so much, Stan. Say hi to Tracy.
I sure will, and give my best to Ellen.
Okay. Hey guys, okay, dense episode, but very helpful just because so many of you ask about narcissism, or lots of you comment on social media about your narcissistic boyfriend or ex or partner or mother. It feels useful to get a little more educated here. Now, this is a complex topic, okay? Your action step is to re-listen to this if you know someone in your life, and research it, read books. I'm trying to get one more guest here on the subject and haven't been successful. There's another super expert guy. Always open to your suggestions as well. And I think the action step to me is watch the labels and get curious about yourself in relationship to this person and your family of origin, right? Stan gave us some real sweet invitations there at the end to look at yourself, watch the labels, stay curious, and get to know yourself better and get to know this other person better. All right, to review, we have the exhibitionist and the closeted narcissist. The exhibitionist is more the overt, and the closeted is more covert. Man, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. So I just, if we have compassion for the human journey and human beings and how they're raised, I think it'll soften our labeling, perhaps. So do that. Maybe share with a friend. And as always, look in the mirror. Okay, cool. All right, be sure to text me at 720-704-4850 if you want some text updates from me. I occasionally have been shooting videos, short little reminders and tips. I invited people into a special group. So, if you want more contact for whatever reason with me, 720-704-4850. Okay, just text me. You have to be in the U.S., I believe, or Canada, I think, to have this work. So sorry, international folks, no, I don't have access to you guys yet. All right, it's a fun new experiment. Also, if you're on Facebook, you can always join our Facebook group, totally free. You just have to answer a couple questions. It's relationshipschool.com/community, and that'll take you to the Facebook group, answer some questions, and you can join us, all right? In dialogue. Thousands and thousands of people are in there every day having intense relationship conversations. And then I comment in there frequently. Okay, guys, thanks. As always, stay connected, and thanks for listening. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share one of these videos with a friend. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.